just for clarity, Representative Groves, we talked about this in subcommittee. The only challenge that I have with this legislation is the fact that it says a resident would have to be 30 or more miles away. So discrimination in this way, it just really means for people who are 30 or more miles versus people who are 29 miles away or less. And the training that somebody would get if they were 29 miles away in person is very similar for those first 30 hours to the training an individual who lives 1 mile away from them would get. In talking, and so when you spoke with Leader Lambert, because I know you even said this in subcommittee, this is the only reason why we have this 30 miles thing. Was there any rationale that was given as to why somebody who's 30 miles away should be allowed to do it online or in person versus someone who's 29 miles away being forced only to go in person and not have the flexibility of being able to take the class online?
You recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just say that I don't know what Leader Lambert was thinking, but when working, whatever his position was, that was his. Mm-hmm. But I know what I agreed to with Leader Lambert, and my word means more to me than what I may think he was thinking, if that makes sense. So when we agreed walking out of his office that day, my intention is to put the amendment on the bill, and since then I haven't thought anything about it.
Okay. So here's the thing that I would think about colleagues, and I will offer this, and maybe not today, the legal's writing up amendment. There were two thoughts that we had in subcommittee that were really worth considering, and I appreciate you having some integrity, and I do understand when you agree to do something, I think that does matter. But in talking with the Department of Safety as well, 15 to 16-year-olds today are allowed to do their training online. It'll be 1 year difference. They have no concern if this service was actually open to everybody. No concern about our safety, no concern about our roads, and so the 30 miles is really arbitrary as it relates to the point that we care mostly about, which is our roads being safer and providing that accessibility to more people instead of fewer is something that I think we should do. There was a comment made in our subcommittee that maybe this is a trial or something like that. And I do wonder if you would consider if the legislation had this 30 miles provision maybe for its first year, but then subsequent to the Department of Safety saying it's okay, that requirement might go away. Because what I'm thinking about is, like, it is much easier for folks to get on their computer and do this than it is to have their parents have to drive them to a facility. And if there's no public safety interest on our roads that's at stake by having all people have access to this, I really do think it deserves more consideration about why we would have this requirement. What would you think about that?
You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I see your point. I understand your point, and I agree with some of what you're saying. But the agreement that I had when I left Leader Lambert's office that day was to put this amendment on the bill, and for that reason, that's the direction I'm going, because I shook his hand and agreed to it. So therefore, all debate is over with me in regards to that.
Okay. So you wouldn't consider sort of another provision that says we keep this 30-mile requirement for a year, and then assuming there's no change in our public safety, there's no concern from the Department of Safety, then the 30-mile provision goes away? You're just, no matter what, we're just going to do this, despite the fact that it won't make the street safer, the road safer, and it keeps inaccessibility from everybody who might be able to take this and do this lesson online?
You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I understand what you're saying, but I want you to understand me. I shook his hand and told him this is what I was going to do, and I didn't tell him that I would have any, in a year that I'd be willing to remove this provision, or 2 years. That's my intention, was to make this into law the way that the amendment says. So when I left his office, that's what I agreed to, and that's where I am.
Sponsor,
And if the committee wishes to do something different as a committee, that's perfectly cool, but I can't do anything, and I can't agree to anything other than what I've already told Leader Lambert that I was going to do.
okay. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, sponsor, for asking the questions. I mean, I will. I will talk with legal, offer an amendment, and before the committee of the whole, I'll propose it, I reckon. But I think part of this work that we do together, right, it's like you hear more information, you make better decisions, you get more inputs. And so if you learn that something that could be accessible to everyone won't have a negative ramification, you could have a conversation again with your leader and say, hey, I learned some new information, thus I want to make a better, more informed decision. And I just don't understand why we wouldn't do that. Why that seems so complicated is very confusing to me. But I appreciate you being willing to answer the questions. And thank you, Chairman.
If I might offer a suggestion, this could be considered sort of a trial period for 1 year. Anybody can bring a bill next year and extend this 30 days or 30 miles to infinity if they could work in agreement with safety. So moving on, are there any other questions? Question has been called on the bill. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed nay.